Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Raw Barbell Club podcast. I first want to say I'm really sorry that this episode is a little bit late. I think it's late. At the moment, I'm in Vancouver, Canada, visiting my partner. So I'm not actually at the gym, and I recorded this episode a week or two ago, but I just didn't get around to editing it because there was a lot to edit with this episode. I had some problems with the audio. This is a Skype episode, so it's something that I don't really like to do, and hopefully in the future we won't have to do this because I can get these guests to either come to me or travel out and go to them, which I think in-person interviews are kind of my favorite thing. I don't really like doing these Skype interviews anymore, so maybe you guys can help with that too in the future. Anyway, this episode is really cool. It has Harvey Goodman on. He is one of the three main coaches at Phoenix Weightlifting Club in Victoria. And Phoenix is a really cool club because not only do they produce a lot of cool athletes, but all of their main coaches have been really, really interesting weightlifters. Harvey in particular is a multiple-time Olympian. He's won a Commonwealth Games gold medal. He is an amazing person. He always has time for me. I remember when I met him back in the day at weightlifting level 3 course. He was like, spent the night with me over a couple of beers, just telling me amazing stories, and that's kind of why I wanted to get him back on. That was a few years ago, and he's been one of the people that I've really wanted to interview for a long time, so I'm glad that I finally got to do it. Again, I'm really sorry about the audio quality and it cutting out all the time. Our internet, I'm pretty sure it was my internet, just wasn't doing what it was meant to do. In the future, I would love to sit down with Harvey again in person, and guys, despite the audio, this episode is really, really cool, and I hope you like it. Anyway, let's go on to some housekeeping. Guys, if you like this episode, please give it a 5-star rating on iTunes. If you want more episodes like this, you need to share it. That's the only way this podcast grows, by more and more people listening to it. And if you really, really want to help us out, and you know what? Making this podcast is amazing. It's a lot of fun. But if you want it to be even better, if you want me to be able to interview cool people from all over the place, I could even travel to places like Victoria and interview Harvey Goodman in real time, and that would be really cool. I mean, the only problem with that is that it costs money, and you guys can actually help. So we're not asking for much. We're just asking for the price of a coffee. If every single person that listened donated a coffee, we'd probably be able to do that. We'd able to swing it that we could travel to Victoria, sit down with a couple of coaches, couple of athletes, and make those things happen. And that would be really, really cool, right? Can you imagine if we were able to travel and do this podcast? Amazing. But anyway, that's all kind of in the future, something that I really want to do, but it would require your help. So guys, if you want to donate, go to www.rawbarbellclub.com/donate, and we'll try to make that happen. If you can't find that link, there's also a link in the description here. Just donate through PayPal. Guys, this episode is really cool, and Harvey is an amazing guest. He's got such cool stories, and I hope you like it. Guys, without further ado, here is Harvey Goodman.
Supersonic.
Hey guys, welcome to the Raw Barbell Club podcast. I'm your host, coach, and all-around good guy, Andy, and today I have an awesome guest, someone that I met maybe 5 years ago. Would have been about 5
I'd
years
say
ago.
3.5. Yeah, 3.5.
I could have been 3.5 years ago. Harvey Goodman, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Andy. I'm good, and thank you. And how are you?
Oh, I'm very good. It's better now that you're here in the room.
Thanks, shucks.
So, for those that don't know Harvey is one of the main coaches at Phoenix Weightlifting Club in Victoria, Australia. That's correct, right? Are there three of you?
Yeah, there's three. There are three now at Phoenix, and I pop down there 3 days a week and do a little bit of lifting just to stay in a reasonable amount of shape, and I coach as well. So yeah, I've three decent times a week I'm down at Phoenix helping out and doing a bit of my own stuff.
And I guess for people that don't know your competitive history, you were actually an Olympic weightlifter who competed at the '92 Olympics.
Yeah, competed in Barcelona in '92 and also at Atlanta in 1996.
I was born in '91, so that means that I was 1 year old when you competed.
Yeah, and it's sort of it just every year you look at it, you realise, gosh, it was so long ago. So it is, it's 27 years ago since Barcelona and 23 since Atlanta. And yeah, time flies. It really flies. But the one constant is weightlifting is still about lifting weights, and there's a snatch and there's a clean and jerk, and nothing's changed in the sport as far as the equipment or anything like that. So it's just as raw as it ever was, and it's not sort of like golf and tennis and a lot of the other sports where a lot of the equipment gets better. You can hit the ball harder, the tennis rackets are lighter, the strings are different, the golf clubs, the heads are bigger, larger sweet spots, the balls are changed, and all of that. Weightlifting is as raw as it's ever been. So I think that's what I love about it, and it's very black or white. You get it, you can lift it, or you can't lift it. There's nothing in between.
It's very objective. There's no subjectivity to it.
No, and probably only in competition where there might be a technical problem with the elbow or the elbow's locking or something like that. But otherwise, it's a pretty pure sport. And
it's getting even better. Like, how they recently changed a bunch of the rules regarding order of lifting, body weight. So you can't win on body weight anymore. And whereas in the past, if you were a 77 lifter and you weighed 76.9 and someone else weighed 76.4 and they totaled the same as you, they would win. Now it's just whoever hit it first.
Oh yeah, look, a lot's changed. I started in 1982, and when I say changed, the weights are still the same, the bars are still the same. But when I started, the increments were 2.5 kilograms. They weren't one. When the women were lifting, they were lifting with, there was no women's 15 kilo bar. They were lifting with the men's 20 kilo bar. You couldn't, the least amount of weight you could lift between your first and second attempt was 5 kilos. So you couldn't go from, let's say, 70 kilos to 72.5 kilos. You have to go from 70 to 75, and then you could jump 2.5 kilos or 5 kilos or whatever on between your second and third attempt. So there's quite a few things that have changed, and as you said, the body weight has changed as well. And look, I mean, that's I don't really mind either way with the body weight. Again, it was, if you wanted to take the risk and lose an extra 500 grams to get body weight on somebody, then you're dehydrating yourself more, you're potentially weakening yourself more. So there were risks at trying to get lighter than somebody and beat them on body weight on the assumption that you would total the same. So that happened a lot. I didn't really care about it. I just wanted to weigh as close to the limit as I could and beat them by outlifting them. But when the increments were 2.5 kilograms, body weight was more important. Now the increments are 1 kilogram, and you can jump 1 kilo between your first and your second, and 1 kilo between your second and your third. Body weight doesn't matter because you win by 1 kilo, but back in my day, you had to win, if you either had to win by 2.5 kilos or if you had the same total, you won on body weight. So I don't mind the current changes.
Huh. I honestly never thought about it that way. I mean, I really like the new changes, but it never occurred to me that the reason that they had that bodyweight rule was to make it fair across the board, because with a minimum of 2.5 kilo jump, there's actually less weights that you can potentially make.
Correct. It's a higher chance of getting the same total, yeah.
Wow. And so you were not born in Australia, right? You were born in the UK?
Yeah, well, history. My grandmother was born in Tasmania in 1901. My father was born in Sydney. He joined the Merchant Navy as a young man, and he met my mother in England, where he studied, and they got married, and I was conceived and born over there in the UK, in Bolton, near Manchester, and then moved to Australia when I was, I don't even know really, probably 1.5, I suppose. When we permanently moved to Australia. So, yeah, born overseas to an Australian father and an English mother.
Oh, but you basically, lived your whole life here in Australia?
Yeah.
Okay.
Apart first 1.5 years of my life, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. And how did you even get into weightlifting? Was it a big sport back then?
Oh, look, it's got memories. Look, I was a weird kid. I had biceps when I was 5 years old. I was lifting heavy rocks in the garden when I was 6 or 7. I was helping my father build when I was, 6, 7, 8. So I was lifting timber and helping him, holding things for him while he was building when I was a young kid. Never didn't really know much about Olympic weightlifting back, obviously, when you're 7 or 8. But I remember Dad used to go and play squash up at the local sports centre, and there was like a gym, and this is in the 70s, and it was just a weights, obviously a weights gym, but picture the classic chrome-plated weights on the lat pull down machine and the leg extension machine, all those the old school pulley machines back in the 70s. So, and Dad would be playing squash with his mate, and I'd sort of walk off and open the door to the gym and stick my head in as a 7-year-old and watch all the guys lifting all these weights. So I don't know, as a kid I was always interested in strength, and for no real reason, I don't know, I just have been, always. And so at the age of 11 I went to boarding schools. So I lived in Tasmania as a kid, went to boarding school in year 7, and then I had part of the curriculum was to do weights once a week. So at the age of 11, I started doing weights, actually lifting weights once a week, and that was pulley machines, leg extensions, pull downs, all of that. There was a free bar there. One of the weights teachers was trying to teach us how to lift the bar to your shoulder and push it over your head. So by the time I was 12, I'd done nearly a year of weights once a week, and I remember lifting at 12 a butchered type of clean and jerk, about 40 kilograms over my head. I didn't really know much about weightlifting. The biggest name in weightlifting that I remember at that age, especially just while I was in Tasmania and just moved to Melbourne, was Alexeyev, the big Russian, the big Soviet lifter, because that guy was, he was always on the TV. So I remember him seeing him on the news, and then so I knew of him, and he was the biggest. He was the biggest at the time. Then when I moved to Melbourne, saw a little bit on TV. I remember when I lived in Hawthorn, I walked up to the Hawthorn swimming pool one day and walked out of the swimming pool and saw this room with all these wooden platforms on it. There's about 8 or 9 wooden platforms. And there was it was a Saturday afternoon. I walked in. I was stripping wet. I'd just been in the pool. I was in a pair of shorts. I was 12 years old, and I walked in. There was a rack, and it had some bars on it for doing curls and presses and things. I just walked up and grabbed a bar, and there was a whole lot of weightlifters sort of stretching out on the floor. They'd finished their session, and I sort of just walked in, sort of looked at them, and when I'm talking weightlifters, I'm talking Robert Cabas, Ian Laurie, all of these people that I would have got to know in the future. And I just walked up as an ignorant kid, walked up to this bar, did 5 curls on it, put it back, and walked out. And when I was 12, and then I started doing stuff at school around sort of working, just did workouts in the gym, lifting, like pull downs, all that sort of stuff, bench press, and then there was a guy who tried to talk me into weightlifting when I was in year 8, and I was a bit, didn't really want to go. I was probably a little bit shy. Then year 9, just kept doing weights at school, but not weightlifting. Then year 10, the clean and jerk competition, I entered that. So Paul Cotter, who was running the VWA at the time, had a clean and jerk competition where he would run 10,000 school students through this.
How did that competition run?
He was very good. I mean, he would send people down to certain schools and get basically the whole school to go and lift a weight, and other schools who had decent phys ed teachers would do that off their own back, but there was prizes offered, so there was a fair bit of equipment that was on offer for the schools that had the most participation and things like that. So then Paul would publish a book with a little booklet with everybody's name and what they lifted from every school, and the book got quite thick over the years. So it's a very good way for talent identification, and that's how I got in there. I was extremely competitive. I think I clean and jerked about 60 kilos. This was in year 10. I was 14, and then there was a couple of other guys at my age who did more. There was a couple who did around 70 or 75. I didn't like that at all. So I said, well, I don't want to be beaten. So I ended up going down to the Hawthorn Weightlifting Club and started training 4 days a week when I was 14, just turning 15.
And so what year was that?
That was 1982. So
82.
So people, when I started there, Robert Cabas wasn't at Hawthorn then. I think he was training at Richmond. But Bill Stelios was there. So Bill Stelios was the golden boy of Australian weightlifting and dual Commonwealth Games gold medalist at that time. And, he was in the gym, and definitely someone straight away that I sort of looked up to as soon as I started there. And there was a big super heavyweight, Bob Edmund. He still used to do the split snatch and the split clean and jerk, and he could split snatch about 167.5 kilos and split clean and jerk 210.
Holy crap.
There was Ian Laurie. He was quite a good lifter, Commonwealth Games silver medalist. So all of these guys, and they were just on their way out as I started. So I got to train with a year with them. But Bill Stelios was only about 23 at the time, so I had a number of years training with him. So there was a good pedigree of lifters at Hawthorn when I got there. So a lot of people to look up to, a lot of people to help who helped you, and a lot of people to sort of try and chase down and see who you could beat.
When you first started lifting, what was your weight class that you were in?
I was in the 60 kilogram class for about not very long, but 67 kilogram class, or 67.5 kilograms. So I probably stayed in that category for probably about a year and a half. And then I started, I just put on I started growing. Obviously, I was growing as well. You're 15, so that was the category I started at. And the first year I competed. At the end of the first year, so after 8 months, I'd snatched 70 and clean jerked 100.
Yeah.
So that was as a 15-year-old. That was what I did at the end of after 8 months of actually doing weightlifting 4 days a week.
Surely being a kid in that situation with all these big lifters around, you've got some interesting stories of things that went on in the weight room and whatnot. Like some funny stuff would have gone on. Can you talk a bit about that?
Oh, look. Yeah, well, the funny ones were, were guys who would, after training, they'd be sort of hanging on the bar above the squat rack and someone would, dack them or something like that. That was pretty funny. You probably couldn't do that now because, most gyms are probably 50% females, but not that everything came down. But, yeah, some of the sort of the little shenanigans that happened when it was only men. But look, we used to have every Saturday afternoon after training, we'd wrestle as well and just muck about. So it was a good way to get off a bit of steam as well. So we did that for quite a while. So yeah, that was fun. I mean, it was always fun because there was a swimming pool there. It was an Olympic swimming pool, and it was great to go out on a hot day and a Saturday afternoon, and you'd walk out as a 15 or 16-year-old. I've got Marty Leach walking beside me. He's 110 kilograms and huge quads, clean and jerk 200 kilograms, and just walking beside you. So all of my friends or people who might not have liked me would stay well away from me because I was hanging around with all these huge guys at the swimming pool. So it was you always felt that you had a bit of protection in the summer. So that was awesome. But we were it was pretty hardcore, pretty serious training. But and Paul Coffer was a very ruthless coach, and he still is, and that's why he has the success he has.
You talk about I've heard so much about Paul and Sam, and they've obviously a huge part of the sport in the Oceania region. Can you talk a bit about their coaching, or Paul's coaching style, and maybe a little bit about what your program looked like back then, if you remember?
Yeah, look, Paul's. Certain people just have it. The first time you see them, you're attracted to them, and Paul and Sam are both 5 foot tall. They're from Sicily. They're immigrants into Australia. Sam was the administrator. Paul was the coach. We would... so there'd be 20, 25, 30 of us pretty much in the gym at 5 o'clock just waiting. And nobody trained without Paul before Paul came because we didn't even know what we were going to do. And we would, so we'd be waiting, and then come Paul. He'd be in a white pair of sort of slacks and a blue polo shirt, and he'd have his sunglasses on. He's looking pretty cool, and he'd pull out a piece of paper, and I'm talking 10 centimetres by 10 centimetres, maybe a bit bigger, 20 centimetres by 10 centimetres. That would get pinned up on the on the board, and then 25 people would just flock to that piece of paper, and we'd be just looking at it. So everybody's name would be across the top. Everyone did the same program, and then Paul would put their and everyone would then have their weights that they were doing. So there'd be 5 exercises, and then just a weight for a set. And that was it. It was very, very simple. And
sorry, Harvey, it did just cut out again once more. I heard everyone went up to the paper.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, I've got my video off. So everyone, so everyone would flock up to the board and look at the piece of paper, and everyone's name was across the top, and it was all done in pen, just a sort of a ruled line, 30 ruled lines down. 20 or 30 ruled lines. The program is there, 4 or 5 exercises with the sets and reps on your maximum weight. And then everybody's weight was written under their names.
All right, guys. So this is a part where the recording goes dead, and we rejoin with Harvey telling us about his relationship with his coach.
For the first, probably, he coached me for about 12 years. So that was how and it was love-hate. We had our arguments. I was, my behaviours as a 15-year-old were very aggressive. It was good sport for me because I had a lot of energy and aggression, probably going through, puberty and all that sort of stuff. So it was a very good sport for me. But, every now and again that got a bit out of control. So I was not probably I wasn't the most refined person in the gym, especially if I started missing weights. I was very, I used to get pretty angry as a young man, and probably through most of my weightlifting career. But so we had our moments, Paul and I. But at the end of the day, we were a good team, and he was a good coach. He knew how to push my buttons, and I knew how to react, and we were a good team. And he was extremely psychological. He just had that ability to do that, and he had that ability to find out how to get the best out of each individual, which I think's extremely important in any sport, but weightlifting as well. I think it's the psychology of the sport is extremely underrated and extremely important.
It seems the more coaches that I talk to, the more I'm hearing that it's not about the program, it's not about the coaching cues, it really is about how the coach-athlete relationship and how much that coach can just squeeze every ounce of potential out of these athletes. And a lot of it seems to be from that mental aspect.
Yeah, look, it is. There's always a technical side, but, I always say it's 80-20. As 80%, it's mental and psychological, and 20% sort of technique. It's as far as the approach to the sport and coaching. I always say to people, you want to learn technique, go watch good people lift. Watch videos. Go and, the person who's got the best technique in the gym, watch them, see what they do.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. Sorry. It looks like I've lost you again.
Completely instruct somebody on technique. They've got to see it. They've got to see videos of themselves. They've got to see other people. So that's how I learned. I didn't learn by Paul physically spending a heap of time with me. I learned by watching all of the really good lifters in the gym and getting bits and pieces from everybody and getting advice from people, and also getting coached by my coach. So it's a lot more than, learning how to lift is a lot more than just coming from your coach. But the psychology of it, and, just knowing your lifters and being there for them. And sometimes I remember Niku, I trained with Niku Vlad. I trained with the world champions for 4 or 5 years every day. And I remember Niku always saying to me, he said, if you warm up, and it just might be a Monday and you're feeling really good, just go for it. Sometimes you just got to not plan a heavy session. Sometimes they just happen.
Yeah.
And then other times you plan a heavy session, and if for some reason you're not right. So being a coach, it's very important to know when your lifter is on or not. And if they're not on, sometimes you challenge them to turn themselves on. But you've just got to be very careful, and if it's not happening, just and you can't make it happen, just do something that doesn't require a lot of mental effort, like squats and pulls, and then do it again next week and try again.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, and I think a lot of people feel the need, especially when they have a written program in front of them, like they have to follow it to the T. But yeah, sometimes that's not the best idea, is it?
No, and again, if I see someone's going well, and I don't know, let's say it was Liam who you're done. That's it.
Yeah.
And then he might do a double on 110 and it's easy. And I say, well, do 115, and he does 115, then it might be 120. So it's not, sometimes it's set and forget. Other times it's, if you can see something and they're on, give it a bit of a push.
Hey, Harvey, it does keep cutting out on me still.
Mm-hmm.
What we can do is I might just ring your mobile number, and we'll do this obviously off camera. I mean off recording, and then I'll just record it through there, and it might be better for us.
Yeah, I mean, do you want me to? Okay, I'm just thinking whether do you reckon it's happening on my side?
It could be happening on your side. It could also be happening on my. I mean, I do this a lot, so it usually my Wi-Fi usually is okay.
Yeah, because I'm on maybe I'll. How about a hotspot to my phone and we'll try that.
Okay, cool. Do you want to hang up and we'll call back in again?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, give me 30 seconds. I'll just change it.
Sure thing.
Okay, so where we left off is we were talking about the coach-athlete relationship, and you had just started talking about Liam.
Okay. Part of that relationship, and it's a partnership that you have with your lifters. Is some days, some sessions are they look on, and it might not be a planned event. You've got some sets and some reps, and for example, it might be Liam. He's doing 4 sets of 2 snatches on 110. And one day he gets to 100, and it looks a bit rough, and I might say, look, just do them at 105 today, and don't worry about 110. Or we might do once at 110 and say, let's just drop back down. And another day he does 110 easily, and I might think, well, he could do his other 3 sets on 110, or if he's looking really good and, just for a bit of confidence, we might, would have pushed to 115 for double. And if you did that, maybe go up to 120 for double and really push it. So there's no expectation. He hasn't walked in thinking he's going to be pushing it. And sometimes just even doing that is just something that I would typically do, especially if they're looking really good. I might change what's happening on the day. It's sort of slightly different or diverges slightly different from the program. So that's one thing that I've learned over my time is, if you're looking really good, don't waste it every time.
Yeah. And how did your training evolve over the time that you spent at Hawthorn? Because, training as a 15-year-old is obviously a little bit different potentially to how you trained up to when you were, in 90, 92 and 96 and 99 when you were at the World Champs.
Yeah, look, it did. I mean, obviously, your programs evolve. I mean, as a coach, I've learned a hell of a lot. You think you know everything because you've been in the sport for so long, and you don't, and you realise that even my programming's changed slightly for my lifters, and it's obviously programs for any lifters are always going to be very similar, but some might just be tailored slightly differently according to their strengths and weaknesses. Look, it's hard to remember. I don't remember my programs a lot when I first started, but I definitely remember with my coach Paul was heavily influenced by the Bulgarian program, and I would suggest that our initial programming was very similar to the Soviet, or let's say the Russian program, which was very structured, reasonable amount of repetitions. Not I mean your doubles, triples, fours, fives. But what I found is that once we got into the late 80s, and I was so blessed as a young kid to, in 1980, I think it was 84, so I was 16, and I remember a Bulgarian, the first Bulgarian came over, and this tiny little guy, 60 kilos, his name was Stefan Dimitrov, and he attempted 138. This was at the Moomba International, so we had every year we had a big international event that Paul organised. It was called the Moomba International. It was always around March, where the Moomba festivities are on in Melbourne, public holiday weekend, and it was on the Saturday he would have the Moomba International, and he would have guests from overseas. So they could have been from the Oceania region, could have been from Great Britain, America. Definitely had a lot of Americans come over. And then we were lucky enough, in '84, we had actually Rolf Milser. I think this was before I started. We had Rolf Milser, the German world champion, came over before I started lifting. So always got some big names, but the game changer for me in my and the way I saw the sport was when they brought Stefan Dimitrov over in 1984, and he was just tiny. You have these views of these Bulgarian lifters, and this guy virtually had no muscle on him. He just basically was just a set of quads.
Yeah.
And he had no deltoids, no biceps, nothing of any note. And he attempted 138.5 kilogram snatch at 60 body weight, and he got halfway up and lost control of it.
Wow.
And that was for a world record. So, my perspective and how I saw the sport changed from that day. And then in
sorry,
1980,
just to dig into that. How so? Was it just like your training, like how you saw training, or how you saw competition, or the type of body you were trying to build for the sport?
Both.
Okay.
Just your demeanour.
Yeah.
How you approach the sport, how you look. It wasn't about big muscles and abs, and it was just lift weights. Their programming, how obviously I wasn't writing my program, but just knowing, that just how the Soviet and the Bulgarian program differed.
Yeah.
And they were both similar. They both had a similar amount of world champions, but by the '84, Bulgaria started to take over and have more world champions and a higher percentage of world champions at the world championships and European events and things like that. So, just seeing this little guy, and he was so calm, just so relaxed, and just went out and did what he had to do. And then we had, and this is still answering your programming question. I've still got that in the back of my mind.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I love segues and tangents.
And then 85 was the big. So 84 was like the teaser. That was a game changer. 85 just absolutely settled it in my own mind about what it was to be a good weightlifter. And we had what was called the Australia Games. And I think that was many sports. And from memory, and again, weightlifting, we set that event up. Paul set it up, Coffer, and we just, everyone in the club, when it was Moomba or any international event, we would spend the Friday night setting it was held in a basketball court that adjoined the gym. So the weightlifting club had 8 purpose-built weightlifting platforms, and then a doorway into a basketball court, which we used to erect a 4 metre by 4 metre competition platform. Already had the stand, it could probably seat 1,500 people easily.
Is that where nationals and stuff is? Is that the same place?
We had some nationals there. Yeah, I've got some old videos of nationals being held at that venue and things like that. But and even the '96 Olympic trials were held there.
Is that the same gym that Hawthorn is at now, or is that a different gym?
No, completely different.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, completely different. So this was a purpose-built weightlifting gym.
Yeah.
With an adjoining basketball court, and whenever we had big events, we used that basketball court to hold the event, and we could get 1,500 people in there.
Yeah.
So the Australia Games was and then we brought the full Bulgarian team out. So Suleiman, his name was Shalamanov back then, named Shalamanov, Bulgarian. I think it was another guy called Pashov, another guy called I think Blagoyev came out, and another weightlifter called Zdravko Stoichkov. And Zdravko Stoichkov was a 75 kilo lifter. He was about 5'8", and he was as skinny as a rake. And he just had a set of quads, and he could clean and jerk 211 kilos at 75.
Holy crap.
He didn't last very long.
Yeah.
Had a world record, but it was just proof that none of these Bulgarians had bulging muscles. They just looked like normal people with big quads.
Yeah.
That's what they look like. And the biggest thing for me was, you know, I looked at a lot of lifters when I was young, and you know, they were very aggressive. You know, just big chest beaters yelling and screaming out in the warm-up room and G'ing themselves up. And that's how I was lifting. And then I saw the Bulgarians. They just walked in calmly with their training bag. They had their boots on. They'd sit in the seat, and then they'd just talk to each other, and they'd just start lifting. And they'd, you know, lift. And next thing you know, they're attempting close to world records in training a few days before the event. And no showmanship, no froth and bubble, no chest beating, just go up to the bar, lift it, sit back down. And that was the ultimate game changer for me. So I changed my whole demeanour. On that after I saw that, and became a lot more relaxed when I lifted. Probably not when I missed the weight. I probably wasn't that relaxed, but when I was lifting, I was quite calm and relaxed. So that's all those little things I learned from the Bulgarians.
This is kind of going off tangent a little bit. So you say 84 was a game changer. That was the year that the Soviets boycotted the Olympics, right?
Yeah, that was. So that was. Because so that the a lot of the Australians, but not all of them, and a lot of Americans boycotted in 1980, and then there was a reciprocal boycott in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Wait, were you around when Taranenko clean and jerked 266?
Yep. I drove up to Canberra to see that.
Oh, what was that like?
That was interesting. And I was competing as well.
Yeah.
Obviously before that. So yeah, we all drove up and to Canberra, and there was Kurlovich was there, the other big. May he rest in peace. Alexander Kurlovich died, I think, last year or the year before, very young. So he was up there. Taranenko was there. I think Zakharovich was there. There were a lot of good Soviet. There was still the Soviet Union back then. I think it was 1988. Yeah, so we drove up in our cars, and I think I competed the day before, and then we all hung around to watch Leonid Taranenko. And what I remember is, because we were staying up at the Institute of Sport. All I remember is that this guy never came out of his room for 3 days. That's all I remember. There was no one, basically I just sort of remember Paul, opening the door slightly and passing food and things to him. He was like a hermit, and nobody really saw him. I don't recall seeing him at all. And then on the day, we all sat in the crowd, and we saw him snatch 210 kilograms. So I think I've got to remember that. I think this would have been after the Olympics in Seoul.
Yeah,
I think that's the timing of it, and because he didn't lift, Taranenko didn't lift in Seoul, and but I'm not 100%. I know he didn't lift, but I can't remember the exact timing. But yeah, so he snatched 210, beautiful. I mean, for a guy who weighed 140 odd kilos, his squat position was exquisite, and his technique was just unbelievably good, and just a very just a perfect exponent of the snatch. And he did 210. Then he, whatever he started on, 245 or something like that in the clean and jerk, and then he took 266 and cleaned it, got pinned in the bottom position, and then just got out of it, and then jerked it, wobbled around a bit, and held on to it. So that's still to this day the biggest ever competition clean and jerk.
Wow. And that was a bet, right? Or that took a bit of encouragement. Was that Paul that did that?
Oh, look, I think there was incentives definitely offered to make a world record.
Yeah.
He would have been the world record total as well.
Yeah, it was, I think. And it's only recently been broken by Lasher, right?
Yeah, Talakatsi, the Georgian super. Yeah, so he's definitely taken over the mantle as probably the greatest of all time.
Wow. What do you think about the changes in the athletes now? Because it seems that gone are the days of like athletes that are just quads. Like a lot of the best athletes nowadays kind of look like they're pretty well rounded in terms of their physiques and like their athleticism.
Yeah, look, I mean, my observation or my read on the sport was the Bulgarians, most of them didn't have a long lifespan as lifters.
Yeah.
They were purpose built, and they didn't. I still think there's a need to do other types of exercises just to strengthen. Keep your shoulders and your upper back and things in decent shape. So I do think that a lot of that's changed. The Soviets seem to have a longer lifespan in the sport, and even people like Yurik. And Yurik was a lot better built, all round than a lot of the Bulgarians of his weight, and he seemed to last a lot longer. So I think to have longevity in the sport, I think having a little bit more muscle and a bit more strength that's not necessarily needed for weightlifting is important. And even me as a kid, digging and helping my father doing manual labour, right up until I was 15 or 16, that's I think all that held me in good stead as well as far as building that base. But Bulgaria was just pure Olympics, heavy every day. 3 times a day they were maxing, basically every day of the week. So Abajev built purpose-built weightlifters, but as I said, not many of them lasted, a long time. So I think for longevity, you definitely need that other strength and a bit more strength in the upper body, etc. I think the other thing I've noticed over time is just exposing the speed as well. They train a little bit more. Most lifters seem a bit quicker now than what they did in my day as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. But you were pretty quick.
Oh, I don't know. It's hard. I don't know. Maybe I just didn't sound quick, but a lot of it's just they just seem. I just think in general, in general they were. There's a bit more speed, a bit more explosion these days. If people want to see what Harvey looks like lifting, you can go onto YouTube and you'll be able to find some videos if you do some deep digging. There's a couple there. There's the Commonwealth Games. There is some video of the 94 World Championships in Turkey. They're on YouTube. They're reasonably hard to find, but the 1994 World Weightlifting Championships. So there's my snatches and clean and jerks. There's a couple there. One of my close friends has a lot of videos from the 80s that I've got to get hold of and put up as well. It's very very interesting. Weightlifting in the 80s was I would have been on the news at least once or twice a year from the age of.
I really did want to talk about that as well, because that's something that we don't see happen very often. Like you were on Telstra commercials and stuff back in the day, right?
Yeah, I was in a couple of commercials. I was on a Mitre 10 Father's Day commercial. I was on a Telstra commercial. Got interviewed by people who were sort of a little bit older, but it was Bert Newton on Channel 9, or Channel 10 at the time, had a morning show. I was on that, interviewed. But the national championships were something that was on the news. It was, it would be on, all, Channel 10s, Channel 9, Channel 7, ABC. There'd be some footage of people lifting and some, commentary about the National Weightlifting Championships. So that was common. That happened every year, and if there was any other major weightlifting event, there would be something on the news. There was a fair bit in the local paper. But, obviously things have changed. The variety of sport and activity these days and pursuits, sporting pursuits, is a lot greater than what it was back then. And it was footy, it was cricket, it was athletics, might have been weightlifting, but it was just some of the raw Olympic sports always, and the swimming obviously always got a mention on with the footy and the cricket. So that was sort of it. It just didn't have the diversity of things like even CrossFit or even the stuff like Ninja Warrior and all of these other things that and people can do these days that weren't around back then. And obviously the media landscape's changed, and not as the proportion of people who watch mainstream free-to-air TV is a lot less than what it was. Everyone watched TV back in my day. There was no Netflix. There was no YouTube stand. There was nothing like that. Obviously no social media, no internet. There was nothing. That was it. TV was your only, and your newspapers were your only means of presenting any sort of newsworthy activity.
Do you think there's a way to make weightlifting, like, for example, we talked about the talent identification program earlier on, and that seems like something that we could definitely bring back, and it would definitely help boost the number of kids within the sport. But do you think there are things we can do to boost the public profile of the sport?
Yeah, look, it's my observation is it just seems a lot harder to get kids interested.
Yeah.
And whether that's a school thing or again, it's just the choice out there is just, there's so much choice these days in any sort of physical pursuit. The weightlifting, doesn't get as much as a look in. It's never been a huge sport, but I honestly think having reintroducing something like Paul had, might be a power clean competition or a power snatch or a clean and jerk competition or whatever, and just have it out there and just smash it over whatever type of media outlet you can. And it might be online, it might be slightly different, but yeah, I think having somewhere where you can capture, people send in a video and register and send in a video, and you try and aim at a demographic that's as young as possible, potentially over the 13 to 17-year-old if you can, however you do that. But what I'm seeing is that it's just getting those 20 kids into the gym who are between 14 and 17 in your club that was probably we had back in the 80s, that just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So and obviously we're getting a lot more people who are coming in later in their early 20s to mid 20s or late 20s, and sometimes it's getting to the point where it's always good to build a base as a teenager, male or female, going through puberty and all of that, rather than someone who's 23 years old and not as flexible and have done a whole lot of other sports, and it just makes weightlifting a little bit harder. So the key is to get people in as young as possible as they're developing, so you can mould them, and they've got that flexibility and the ability to, to get into those, the positions, you get into as a weightlifter. So, it's important. It's how you do it. It's multifaceted. I think obviously CrossFit is huge. There's more people doing Olympic lifts than ever before through CrossFit, and it's just tapping in to that, and even gymnastics. A lot of especially female lifters come from gymnastics background, and it's getting the people who it's a pathway to get into weightlifting, and it's not poaching. It's not going to CrossFit and targeting people. If someone wants to do CrossFit, they do CrossFit. If they love the Olympic weightlifting part of CrossFit and want to pursue it, then they either pursue it through a weightlifting club, or their CrossFit box becomes affiliated, and they have a couple of weightlifters training at the CrossFit box. So, but the key is to try and get as many in as young as possible, and hopefully, the pervasiveness of CrossFit can provide that avenue, and we've just got to build those relationships, I think, with CrossFit, and just have that. It's just a cohesive, collaborative arrangement where you can have events, shared events. We had the CrossFit Slam Down 3 years ago in Melbourne. It was great.
What was that?
It was cool. It was called the CrossFit Slam Down, and I can't remember how many people we had. We had a lot of people, but basically, the criteria was, you'd never done weightlifting before, and you were part of a CrossFit box, and that was it. And we had it was an affiliated AWF sanctioned event. Everybody got a membership and got a registered total on the AWF database. So that seemed to work well, but it's just about organising more of those events and having regular ones to try and get more awareness and have a pathway into the sport. And that seems to be the biggest one. It just seems, being on the VWA board, I've been on the board for about 6 or 7 years. It's the pathways through schools just doesn't seem to be as big. But again, that's depends on how hard you try and how much effort you put into that. But it's Queensland might probably have a different and a better model. We should probably learn from them a little bit more. But it's if you can get a kid at the age of 13 or 14, that's probably the best time to start weightlifting.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, no, that makes complete sense too. And yeah, like I've seen school programs work, and I've seen school programs, I guess, fall flat. So it is interesting to note that like the pathways have changed because of so much choice and things like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's people are you see look. I think it's changing as well, but a lot of people are very, I'll just go to the gym. I'll go to a 24/7. I'll do my weights program. I'll do a bit of cardio, and I'll do it when I want, and I'll do it by myself. And CrossFit gives you that sort of club atmosphere, and weightlifting clubs give you that club atmosphere. So it's really, the benefits of being with a group of like-minded people, and you're all enjoying doing stuff together. I think that's the key, and that's sort of what you've got to sell as well. And you've just got to build awareness of that, and that this isn't a place to go and lift weights. It's also a place where you meet with your friends, and you train with them, and you encourage them, and you share the same dreams, and and you share the same disappointments and failures and successes. So that's sort of what you've got to, I think, the selling point of it as well.
Yeah, I don't think I've made I think I've made more friends in the sport of weightlifting than I've made in my entire life. I wouldn't have met people like you or, Leo Isaac or any of those people if it wasn't for weightlifting.
Yeah, look, and most people are it's like any smallish sport, and it's an Olympic sport, which is great, and it has significant relevance on the planet as a sport if it's in the Olympics. And it's a great little fraternity, and I love it as well.
We talked about you in 1986, and then we kind of went off the rails a little bit. So that was a formative time for you. But can we talk about moving into the 90s and getting ready for this, your first Olympics?
Yeah, look, it was an interesting time. So the 80s were great. I think, I finished school, went to uni, and just kept lifting and kept getting better. And most people who succeed in anything have fierce determination and don't like losing. And I just used to, my philosophy was I'd just pick people off that I wanted to beat, and I did that from day one. I'd target a person, and I'd say, okay, within 6 months I want to be beating that person. And that was just my own personal goal. They never knew. I never made it obvious, but that was just how I approached the sport. And then it got to the point, I think about 1989, I had a go at the oldest Nick Chiancho, who was one of my idols, Australian weightlifting idols, probably one of the best Australian weightlifters ever. He had the oldest record in the book, 157.5 kilos snatch at 90 kilograms. And I remember breaking that record in 1989, snatched 158. So that was a significant point for me, and also getting the oldest record in the book, and obviously and my coach as well. So that was a significant moment. And then we moved to 1990 Commonwealth Games. They were in Auckland. I was in reasonable shape, and then as I got towards the games, my wrist was getting sore, and I'd actually had a fracture in my scaphoid.
Oh no!
So I just kept lifting in agony, and so I got to the Commonwealth Games in 1990, and I was in pretty good shape, but at one stage I was favourite to win the gold, but couple of the English guys were in supreme shape, and I wasn't at my best because of a couple of injuries, mainly my wrist, and so I ended up coming third there. Got the bronze medal. They handed out medals for snatch and clean and jerk. That was the first Commonwealth Games they did that. So I got 3 bronze medals there. So that wasn't in the greatest shape, but did enough to win the bronze. And I did, I missed one clean and jerk, which would have got me the gold in the actual clean and jerk, and probably silver overall. But them's the breaks, and that just sort of steeled my resolve to pursue the 1994 Commonwealth Games. So that was So the 90 Commonwealth Games. Then I sort of had a little bit of a lull. So what happened in around 90, probably around 91, or towards the end of 91, then Paul brought in the Bulgarian. So what happened is he basically had so we got Sevdal and Marinov. So Sevi was the 1988 gold medalist in Seoul in the 52 kilogram class. He brought Kirill Kunev, who was the 1989 world champion in the 82.5 kilo class. Niku Vlad, my books, one of the best weightlifters of all time, Blagoy Blagoyev, who's just a legend, and Stefan Botev, who was I think he won the 89 World Championships as well, and he won the World Juniors as well in the mid to late 80s. So these guys became residents of Australia, and all of a sudden, I'm sort of thinking, God, me being in the top 2 or 3 lifters, in the country, all of a sudden I'm down, I've got 5 lifters ahead of me. And none of these guys are Australian. None of these guys grew up in Australia. And it was very confronting. And that was 91. And I remember I sort of just went through a phase where I was a bit disgruntled and thinking, these guys are taking my place. I went to the World Championships. They couldn't represent Australia back at that stage because they'd only been in the country a few months. Went to the World Championships. It's in Germany, pretty good shape. Lifted on the day, bombed out. Then I had the National Championships in Perth in 91, getting towards the end of the year. And I competed against Blagoyev and I bombed out there. So I just started I just went through this phase of, what am I doing? What's my purpose in this sport? What are these guys have been brought in from overseas and paid good money. And I was getting bugger all. I was getting, a few $1,000s a year from government grants. And these guys stole the limelight. They got all the press. And at the end of 91, I just basically asked myself the question of what am I going to do? So I said, well, I'm going to have a crack at it. So in December 91, I went up to Paul and I said, I'm going to go hard and have a real crack. So during that December, I started training extra hard and focusing on recovery, all of that sort of stuff. And then trained over Christmas. I might have trained Christmas Day, trained Boxing Day, trained New Year's Day. When everybody else was on holidays and doing nothing, I was training my guts out. And then and I came into early 92, which was the Olympic year. And to qualify for the Olympics, I needed 5 kilograms over the national total record.
And what was that record at the time?
It was 350 was the record. So to qualify for the Olympics, I needed 355. And my best total at the time was probably about 347 and a half, I think, roughly. Or it might have been 350, but the total, the actual national total record was 350 or 350 or 352. So I needed 355 to make the team.
Damn.
So these weren't lightweight. So so I needed more than the Australian records to actually qualify for the Olympics. So I just over that Christmas January period, that was it. That was me training and basically busting my guts. And then we had the Oceania Championships roughly around March, and they were in New Zealand. And I went over there and basically said that this was a comp. So I had two comps to qualify for the Olympics. I had the Oceania Championships in New Zealand. Then I had the Olympic trials, which were 3 weeks after the Oceania and Commonwealth Championships in New Zealand.
So not a whole lot of downtime.
No, so that was it. So I went to New Zealand and started at, I think, just roughly 150 snatch. Got 150, got 155, got 160 Australian record. Clean and jerk 190 I started on, then I got 200 and then got 205. So I broke the Australian record by more than nearly 15 kilos, 12 to 15 kilos. And basically that got me in the team. And the Bulgarians were still trying to get in, but that didn't matter because I was in the team. I'd done the qualifying. There was, Blagoy could have made it in the 90 kilogram class, but they would have sent 2. So I knew that 365 kilo total at 90 kilogram body weight, I was in the team at that stage. So I just went to the trials, didn't do much in the trials, didn't need to, and made the team. So that was the turning point. That was a major turning point in my career and how I wanted to deal with these new imports that Paul had brought in to represent Australia. So they, it's either, my attitude was either, let it defeat you or rise above it or rise to them. So I got to the point where I was doing similar weights to Blagoyev or more than Blagoyev and similar weights to Kirill Kunev. So that was the change that I pursued and was successful at. Went to the Olympics. They didn't go. Nicu couldn't get citizenship through them for them. So Nicu represented Romania and Stefan represented Bulgaria. I don't think the other guys got in any other. So I don't think Sebi or Kirill made any of the they didn't make the Bulgarian team. So the guys I was training with lifted. 2 of the guys I was training with at Hawthorn lifted at the Olympics, and but for their own retrospective country where they came from. So that was good. Did okay at the Olympics. Didn't do really, really well. Came 8th, So that was it. That was 92, 93.
Do you remember what you totaled at the Olympics and what your snatch and clean and jerk was?
Yeah. Look, the funny thing was, and this is what I sort of taught myself, and I say this to everybody who wants to listen, especially my lifters, is, the key to weightlifting is you don't focus on the lift until you're over the bar. You don't focus on the lift the night before. You don't focus on the lift when you're sitting down in your chair. You just relax and switch off. And by that time, I trained myself to switch on and off. So, I say this to a few people. I walked out for my first snatch. I think it was 152 and a half in Barcelona. And I walked out and I walked up the steps and I looked out. And the first thing I said to myself, I said, Jesus, you're at the Olympic Games. You'll lift. This is your first lift at an Olympic Games. So I remember thinking that. And then the other thing I remember thinking was, Jesus, look at all the people. It was packed. It was 5, 6, whatever it was, 1,000 people there. And they're the 2 things that went through my head. I hadn't even thought about what I was lifting. That was just walking out to the platform. But that didn't bother me that went through my head, because I knew that once I stood over the bar, I only needed 10 seconds to focus on lifting the weight. I didn't have to focus on lifting the weight when I was walking out. So I just walked out. That's what went through my head. Got over the bar, went through my routine and lifted it, and got my first attempt. And I think I missed my second.
Do you know what your second was?
157 and a half. I missed it on my second, and then got it on my third.
And so that's what did you get to qualify? 155 or 158?
I did 160, so it was 2.5 kilos under my best.
Okay.
Yeah, and the clean and jerks weren't really good. I started 192 and a half and got that, and then I missed 109, and my best was 205, and I was really strong, and I just messed up the jerks on 197 and a half. One of them was quite easy, and then just as I was recovering, it just popped out. So I totaled 350, so it's a bit under my best, but first Olympic Games.
Wow. And what is it like to, I mean, I know you had represented Australia in the past at Commonwealth Games and stuff, but what's it like to get onto the Olympic stage? Surely that's amazing.
Big. It's just bigger.
Yeah.
Everything's Olympics is bigger. It's, the Commonwealth, it's 5 times bigger than the Commonwealth Games. 4 or 5 times bigger. So it's just big. And obviously then you're competing against Commonwealth Games. You've got a chance to win. The Olympics, I had no chance of winning. I finished my clean and jerks and then walked out and sat in the crowd next to the platform and watched Kakishvili, clean and power jerk 235 in my category.
Wow.
235 kilos to win the gold medal. Probably the best lift in the history of Olympic weightlifting. And I was lucky enough to see it after I'd finished. So, yeah, it's just big, and obviously the quality of any athlete at the Olympics, it's at the highest possible level.
Crazy. And so coming back from the 92 Olympics, did much change in your mindset and in your training? Because you train so hard to get there, and oftentimes when you reach your goal, people kind of just turn off. Did you come back hungrier, or did you come back and were like, oh, maybe I can retire now?
Well, no, I still had the Commonwealth Games, 94 Commonwealth Games. That was my focus.
Yeah.
Look, the great thing about the Olympics and doing those weights at the Commonwealth and Oceania Championships in New Zealand, that gave me a very high ranking in the world because no one else was lifting at the time.
Yeah.
So I, for the first 6 months, I had a number one world ranking in my category. So, but that's only because the Europeans weren't lifting at that stage. Obviously, they're coming out of their winter and then they're preparing for the Olympics. But so what happened after the Olympics? I got it in. They used to have every year what was called a World Cup, and they invited the best, basically lifter in every category around the world, plus a few extras, to lift in an event. And so what I was lucky enough, I got an invite to the World Cup in China. So basically after the Olympics, which I actually had my honeymoon after the Olympics, so I went to Fiji for 10 days and then came back and started lifting again. But I had the World Cup, and that was extremely prestigious. I was the only Australian ever to be invited officially to a World Cup based on performance.
Wow.
Ever. So it was I thought that was a big deal. So I went over to Beijing and I trained for that and lifted in that. So I didn't want to lift crap. I remember Kakishvili, not Kakishvili, he wasn't there, but Pyrrhus Dimas, who's a legend and doing great things in the US now. I competed against him and actually beat him in that World Cup event. So obviously he wasn't in the same shape, but I was in better shape. So I actually competed against him once and beat him. So I distinctly remember that. So yeah. So
I don't know how you could ever forget. I don't know how you could ever forget beating Pyrrhus and not bringing it up ever.
So I'll never forget that. But so that was. So look, the thing is that you have a major goal and then you have mini goals along the way. I think that's how I operated.
Yeah.
So the goal, after 92, the goal was Com Games in Canada, and then obviously the World Championships and other major events along the way. So that's just how I did it. So yeah, I never rested. I never took any time off. I think in my whole weightlifting career, even through surgeries and bone grafts in my wrist and knee surgeries, the longest I ever took off was probably 2 weeks. So I never, ever took time off. I was always in the gym doing something and just kept doing it. And the beauty of that is, as long as, I'm lucky, genetically I'm lucky, I can recover very quickly from session to session and from injuries. And so I had the capacity to push it pretty hard all the time. And, the training, you questioned before about training. I mean, it did change a lot. I mean, as I got older, the reps became lower and I was pushing it. You've got 52 Fridays a year. I'd be going as heavy as I could for 40 of those 52 Fridays. Virtually every Friday, I was maxing out.
Yeah. Okay.
All year, pretty much all year round, apart from sort of power programs. But yeah, it would have been at least, let's say it was at least 30, 35 Fridays a year. I'd be going as hard as I could for 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years. So yeah, that was, and we all did it. We all went heavy. Every Friday night was heavy night, and for most of the year.
Max out Friday.
Yep.
Exciting stuff. And then, so you had the Com Games in '94. How did you end up doing there?
Yeah, that was it. That was interesting. So we went to Italy for a training camp. I remember. I missed. I think I was in Italy and I tried 200 5 times and missed the jerk one Friday night, and I wasn't happy. I ended up punching there was a whiteboard in the gym in Italy, and I punched it, and I hurt my wrist.
Was this the same wrist that you had broken your scaphoid in, or fractured?
No, it was the same wrist. Yeah, but I found out later. But what I did is I broke a bit of bone off the radius. Just chipped a bit of bone off it when I punched that whiteboard. And so I was in Italy with a sore wrist, and my knees were very sore, and it wasn't like patellar tendonitis. It was mainly around the side of my kneecaps, caused by a very tight iliotibial band, I2B, on both knees. So I was very, very strong, but really struggling.
Yeah.
In Italy prior to the Com Games, and we got to Canada, and I remember I was in the gym, and as soon as I got to Canada, the beauty of it is you get to the Commonwealth Games Village, you got full support of all physios and masseurs. So I had the masseur onto my legs, and all of a sudden my knees started feeling better pretty quickly, just because the muscles were getting relaxed in my legs. My wrist I didn't really care about. You could take, painkillers and anti-inflammatories, and that just kept that at bay. I remember going into the first training session. So we'd been in Italy. So, Botev and Niku Vlad and Kirill Kunev and Sevi Marinov were all met us. They'd all been in Bulgaria and Romania, and they met us in Italy in the training camp, and then we just joined forces in Italy, and we all came to Canada from Italy. And I remember the first session, I'd started to feel a bit better. I remember power snatching 160 kilograms in front of pretty much all of the Commonwealth lifters from all the other countries. Stefan Botev snatched 200 kilograms in training.
Shit.
And this was a week out. Niku Vlad snatched 195 kilos. So we just rocked up and just demoralised every other country. And the Great Britain were in there, Nigerian lifters were in there, the New Zealand, the Canadians, they were all in there, just and we were just killing them. And it's a pretty good feeling. And I remember, funny story, I remember after that session, my knees were a bit sore, so I went out the back and I saw one of the physios at the venue, and I said, "Look, can I just get a couple of ice packs on my knee?" So what I did is I grabbed me these 2 ice packs out of the freezer, and I wasn't thinking. I just put them straight on my knees, and then I pulled my knee bandages over the ice packs.
Oh no! And you burnt your skin.
Anyway, so I remember sitting there, and I took the ice packs off, and my skin was frozen solid.
Oh.
So picture taking a piece of steak out of a freezer. That's what my knees were like. Anyway, so I'm like absolutely crapping myself, thinking I'm going to get, I was going to have my legs amputated, because I've never felt, frozen skin on myself. I was like really worried. And then the physio came to some hot face washes and put them on my knees, and they thawed out. And then the skin was just a bit red and sore, but that was it. So that was okay. But yeah, at the time I thought, God, I thought that was it. So that was a funny little story, and I don't think I've never heard of it who's done it before. So anyway,
imagine if your career ended because of ice packs.
I know. It was quite funny afterwards, and the skin was just a little bit tender, but yeah, and a bit red, but it didn't, no blisters or anything like that, so it was no big deal. But at the time, it was a really, really strong. I couldn't bend my knees, obviously. I just had to wait for someone to put hot tea towels on them to thaw them out, to basically to turn it back into normal flesh. So that was a funny story after that session. So that was a Com Games, interesting event. So that training session that I had, where I lifted really well, had interesting ramifications to the actual event itself. So it came to my weigh-in, and so we've got the bus from the village down to the centre. We walked in. So that's basically the team doctor, my coach, a couple of my coaches, Paul Coffer was one of them, and went into the weigh-in. I think I had to sauna a little bit, and I weighed in at I don't know what category it was. I think they've changed now. I think this was now the 90. It was a 91 kilogram category. So the weight categories have changed.
So you were around for like three changes.
Sorry?
I said you were around for like 3 changes, right?
Yeah. Changed a couple of times whilst I was lifting. So so it was a 91 kilogram category. So I had to lose a couple of kilos. So that was all right. Weighed in whatever I weighed in at, and then I just sort of didn't really notice anything. I saw Lee Aptrell, the New Zealander. I saw Phil Christou, and I think Phil at this stage had decided to lift up in the next category. So after I weighed in, I sort of didn't pay much attention to anything that was happening in the weight. The team doctor, the weightlifting team doctor, he had a hotel room basically next to the venue. So I just went to his hotel room and lay on his bed and watched TV for an hour and ate and drank and rehydrated, all that sort of stuff. And then we went back to the venue. Just walked back. It was just sort of across the road. And I looked up and I saw up on the board out in the warm-up room, I saw Harvey Goodman, I saw Peter May, and I saw a Kenyan weightlifter's name, and that was it. And I'm thinking, okay, they're just typing in the names, and the other 9 or 10 names will appear. And so I waited, and there was only 3 names up there. And waited. Then basically then we found out that 9 weightlifters elected to move up a category.
What?
So there was 12. I think there was about 12 in my category listed, and 9 of them moved up a category. So the Nigerian moved up, the Canadian moved up, another one of the English lifters might have moved up. The Australian Phil moved up, and New Zealand moved up. So 8 or 9 lifters went up into the next category. So basically there was 3 lifters. There was me, myself, Peter May, and he was my nemesis. He was the guy that I needed to beat for the gold. And then I think he was a Kenyan weightlifter. And that was it. And then I was warming up, and then I think there was IWF. I don't know if Thomas Ayan was there, the president. He might have been. And then basically what they said, there's only 3 lifters, so they were only going to hand out the gold.
Yeah.
They weren't going to hand out a silver and a bronze. So Paul looked at me and he said, they're only going to hand out a gold. Are you all right with that? And I said, yep. I said, I don't want silver or bronze. I only want gold, so I don't care. And so I was fine. And then Peter May and the Kenyan said, no, we're not happy with that. Anyway, so the IWF then made a decision that they were going to give medals. So basically, if everybody totaled, they were guaranteed a medal at the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah.
So very, very strange situation. So that they allowed them all medals to be handed out. And, so I ended up getting 5 lifts out of 6 and winning the Commonwealth Games by 17.5 kilograms.
Do you remember what you totaled?
Yeah, I totaled 362.5.
And what were your best lifts?
I snatched 162.5 and clean and jerked 201 for a Commonwealth record.
Because you can break it by a kilo if you were just going for a...
You could break records by half a kilo back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
okay. That
it was
makes sense.
200. I think the record was 200.5.
Yeah.
I think it was mine at this time, so I think I only broke my own record. But yeah, it was 201 or whatever it was, and so I missed it on my second attempt and got it on my third.
And at this stage, that's your heaviest ever total, right?
362. Well, it was 5 below my personal best of 360. Sorry, 2.5 kilos below my best of 365.
Oh, okay. But sorry, that was the heaviest snatch you've done.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
But you had power snatched 2.5 kilos less than that just like a few days ago.
Yeah, about a week before, yeah. And I cleaned 207.5 and missed the jerk in training a week before.
Wow. And so what is your best total ever? Then?
365.
Oh, 365 is your best total ever?
Yeah.
Okay. And that was at 90?
That was at 90 kilograms, and I did it at 91 kilograms as well.
Okay. And so you win this Commonwealth Games. You obviously feel pretty good because you've beat your arch nemesis, who you set your eyes on beating one person at a time, and you've beaten him at this Com Games. What's next? You come back to Australia?
Yeah. So that was 94. Jesus, what could I think about all this? Yeah. World Championships. So got back, had a week off, and then started training for the World Championships in Turkey. And that was my best result at the World Championships. So I just kept training. So I totaled 365 at the World Championships and came 6th overall and 5th in the clean and jerk. So that was my best ever result at the Worlds.
And where did that place you?
Well, I came 6th.
Oh, 6th, sorry.
Yeah. So I came 6th in the total and 5th in the clean and jerk.
Which is pretty good, right? I mean, considering like who's at these World Championships this year.
Yeah, it was good. I beat a lot of. Yeah, it was good. It was a pretty good lineup. So did pretty well. I think then the winner was Kakashvili was lifting, and Petrov, the Russian, was lifting. So I think Petrov did about 400, and Kakashvili did about 400 roughly, and I did 365. So not too far away, but a fair way away at the same time.
And what was it like moving into 96 for the Atlanta Olympics? Were you still at the sort of top of the game, or, were you sort of like starting to get back into that situation where, you weren't quite there again?
No. Well, 95 came and went to the World Championships, did okay there. It was just single focus again. Circumstances had changed. I had my first son was, or my first kid. I've only got one son. He was born in 94. I bought a house in 95. There was a lot of other things started popping into my life that, weightlifting doesn't pay the bills, and weightlifting, and I've got a wife and a family and a mortgage. So circumstances changed, but I managed to fit it all in, and work and earn money and train, and it just became a little bit trickier. I just had to juggle and manage my time. a lot more efficiently than I ever have before. But yeah, managed to fit it all in, and and Atlanta again, great shape leading up into Atlanta. At the trials, I did 365, snatched the Commonwealth record, clean 205 extreme very easily, and messed the jerk up. So should have been a 370 total, but it wasn't. And then I went to Atlanta with most of the guys went on a training camp in Colorado, but I couldn't get the time off work, so I stayed back and then met them in Atlanta, and we're talking. So Yurik Sarkisian was in the team, and so was Stefan Botev, and so was Kirill Kunev. And then there was myself, Damien Brown, Stephen Kettner, and Johnny Newen. So that was the team in '96. And so I was in really good shape. The funny thing is, Brownie, Damien, and I, we were very close, and he was an extremely good weightlifter. He clean and jerked, 187.5 kilos at weighing 76 body weight. So he was a very, you put that in perspective, say to Francois doing 165, 170, Damien was doing 185.
Yeah.
In the same category, just a few years before. So he was good. So and Damien, just probably a couple of weeks out, he'd hurt his back, and just before I went, I remember I was at work. I'd had a very heavy session on the Friday, and then another heavy pull session on the Saturday. So I was very fatigued. I was at work on the Monday, sitting at a computer. Bent down to do my shoelaces up, and my back went. So I got to Atlanta with, I was still pretty strong, but I'd hurt my back, and just by doing my shoelaces up, it wasn't in the gym, and so I had a lot of. So Damien and I both got sore backs trying to get right for the for the competition. So we both lifted. We didn't. I didn't do too badly. I was probably just slightly off because of the back on the day. Damien was the same, but we both lifted okay, but we both didn't lift our best.
Do you remember what you ended up lifting?
Yeah, I did 157.5 snatch and 200 clean and jerk at 91 kilos, so not too bad. Missed 162.5 twice. I actually started on 157.5 and missed 162.5 twice, and I missed the jerk on 205. So still pretty strong, but the clean was a little bit tough on 205s, but missed the jerk. So
you missed you missed the jerk twice on 205, is that right?
Once. No, I did. I think I started on 190.
Ah, okay.
190, got 200, and then missed 205. So
yeah.
It wasn't a really bad. I didn't go really, really bad, but like at snatch 170 and clean and jerk 210 in the weeks coming up to the Commonwealth Games before I hurt my back, the Olympics before I hurt my back. So I was in very good shape, and that just took the edge off hurting my back. So doing my shoelace up. So them's the breaks. So.
And so, as advice for people at home, don't get shoelaces. Use straps.
So that was it. That was sort of pretty much the that was the last big event I competed in. It was the 96 Olympics. So so it was a good. It's a pretty good career in lifting, and then I just sort of stayed out of it in the early 2000s. So I retired in '99.
And what was the decision process to retire? Because I'm fascinated by elite athletes and how
simple.
Yeah.
I made a promise to my wife that I would, and I got qualified for the Olympics in 2000. So I've done the qualifying total, but I just by that time I was pretty buggered.
Yeah.
and injuries were starting to get a little bit worse. I was 30, getting close to 33 years old. So I made a promise to my wife that I'd focus more on the family, my job, and making a life for ourselves, and that's what I did. So that was end of 1999 was it, and then I made a quick comeback in 2002 as a master, and just mucking about. Did 6 weeks training for that, and won the World Masters in Melbourne, and that was the last time I competed. That was 17 years ago as a master. Then I still always did a bit of training just to stay in shape, squatting and things like that. And then, so really there was 11 or 12 years where I just didn't really get involved with the sport at all. Didn't really do anything, which was good. Focused on my career and my job and my family and all of that sort of stuff.
And do you mind me asking, what is it that you studied at university, and what do you do?
Well, I studied engineering.
Yep.
And then I started study again, did software development in 99. I did that part-time, diploma in software development, finished that in 2004. So work-wise, I've always basically works pretty much mostly at Telstra. Most of the work I've done at Telstra was in business operations, commercial management, and performance management, contract and management of contracts. That was 10 years at Telstra. Then Foxtel, I spent 4 years at Foxtel, and did contractor management, stakeholder management, contract management, and installations management at Foxtel for 4 years, and then came back to Telstra and did 10 years of work at Telstra, and again mainly in the that's then got more specialised into the data and analytics space, business intelligence, process improvement, customer experience improvement, all of that sort of stuff. A lot of heavy, managing teams of data scientists, business intelligence specialists, and data analysts, and basically, giving insight onto business performance and where to improve, where to invest, and how to maximise customer experience, all of that sort of stuff through data and analysis. So that's I'm a bit of a geeky sort of person. Outside of weightlifting, I still do a little bit of mucking about with programming, lots of spreadsheets and numbers and statistics, love all that sort of stuff.
And do you still perform the snatch and clean and jerk ever?
Yeah, I do power snatches and power clean and jerks. My elbow's been buggered. I've had that operated on 2.5 weeks ago. That was a clean out, and it's really good. And I'm snatching again after 2.5 weeks. Typically what I do, I don't do much. I don't squat snatch. I don't squat clean. I power snatch. I typically power snatch 85 kilos for doubles or triples, and I typically power clean 105, 110 for doubles.
I mean, for people at 53, those are pretty good numbers still.
52, 52.
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to add years here.
Yeah, back squat. I can, if my legs are strong, I can back squat 180 for triples, and I can front squat 150 for triples.
Yeah, those are still decent numbers. Would you ever make a comeback to competitive masters weightlifting?
No, not interested. Plus, what? No. There's no interest at all in that. But I enjoy coaching. Always have, and had a few good lifters over the years, including my daughter.
Yep, Rachel Goodman.
Rach, yeah, she lifted for about 4 years. And then Liam and Phil, and currently sort of focusing on Kelly. So she's going to the Masters in Canada. So I'll be heading off to Montreal on the 16th of August so that's 5 weeks time.
Exciting
So-
stuff. And sorry, how did you end up at Phoenix?
I've been asked that a lot because obviously I started at Hawthorn and I'm Hawthorn through and through. Look, it was just based on proximity, really. It was close, and Robert Cabas and Ivan Katz started that club, and both of those guys have always been close friends of mine, and so I had no allegiance to Hawthorn or anything like that. It was close to home, and that's really all it was. I mean, if I lived really close to Hawthorn, I probably would have been at Hawthorn.
Yeah.
So it's pretty simple.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's probably a good place to leave off.
Yeah, I've yapped on a fair bit. So there's I've tried to summarise as 37 years of my involvement in this sport as in a couple of hours. But there'll be a lot that I've left out. But that's what's come off the top of my head.
Harvey, you did such a good job, and I'm sure that we can do a round 2 at some point.
Yeah, well, and again, if you've got any other questions, more than happy to chat about them.
And if someone is in Victoria and is interested in coming to Phoenix or getting in touch with you for some coaching, is there somewhere that they can go to find you?
Oh, look, I think the easiest thing is just Facebook Phoenix. Weightlifting would be the easiest one, or contact. I'm on Facebook as well. It's easy just to contact. I'm pretty open. I've got nothing closed on Facebook. Or get in contact with the Victorian Weightlifting Association. So it's pretty easy to find. Everyone's pretty accessible these days. But yeah, it's Phoenix. There's a number of ways. Facebook me. You can contact VWA or just go under the Phoenix page. Just contact details there. So there's a number of avenues.
Awesome. And I'm just going to wrap this up, and then I'll just quickly talk to you off recording as well, if that's okay.
Yep.
All right, guys, you can find Raw Barbell Club at Raw Barbell Club on all of our social medias. So that's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Make sure you check us out on Instagram, watch our stories. They're always popping. And make sure you check out our YouTube channel. There's a new training video every week and a new podcast pretty much every week as well. Guys, if you love this podcast just like I did, please consider giving us a 5-star rating on iTunes and share it with your friends, because that's how this podcast grows. And lastly, if you really, really, really love this podcast, you now can help. Making this podcast is an amazing experience, but it does cost us a lot of money from time and bandwidth fees and all of those things. So, and hosting fees, obviously. So if you want to help, you can now donate to the podcast. Just click the link in the description or go to www.rawbarbellclub.com/donate. All we ask is the price of a coffee. And if everyone did that, we'd be running for another 3 months or so. So thank you so much to everyone that's already donated, and you guys are the best. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Supersonic.